Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. We are going to do the 16th episode of the summary of the Quran, and we will cover Surah Al-Mu'minun and Surah An-Nur, Surahs 23 and 24 respectively. Surah Al-Mu'minun is a Meccan surah and Surah An-Nur is a Madinan surah. These are the last two surahs of the third group of surahs. We already covered Surah Al-Hajj, which is the partner surah of Surah Al-Mu'minun. And we talked about the fact that Surah Hajj and Surah Al-Mu'minun, like most other surahs of this group, are covering the theme of inzar, warning handed out to the disbelievers, and basharat, the good news given to the believers of success round the corner. In Surah Hajj, the warning was given to the people of Quraysh with regard to their status as custodians of the house of God. In Surah Mu'minun, we'll see that the Almighty is mentioning that there is success waiting for the believers. So we start with the first 11 verses. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qad aflahal mu'minun. The believers have the good news. Give them the good news of inheritance of the paradise. That's where the surah begins from. So it's a surah of good news right from the beginning. And goes on to say, these are the ones, allazina hum fi salatihim khashi'un. Good news for them as a reward for being humbly submissive in their prayers, for staying away from involvement in frivolous matters, for paying zakat regularly, for guarding their private parts from indulging in what is prohibited, for fulfilling their promises and trusts, and for carefully maintaining their prayers. These are the good people, the believers, who are going to get the good news of the paradise, and they have already gotten the news, and they will get the result very soon. We move on to verses 33 to 38 of this surah, and what we find is a very interesting mention, which we do find elsewhere in the Quran too. The Almighty at times talks about the narrative of the disbelievers, the way they would forcefully put across their point of view. Every ideology, every narrative has some followers, and people who have a misleading narrative, they take pains to present their point of view so forcefully to their followers that they are not able to look at anything different, look at the alternatives. What the Quran has done is, it's a remarkable way that the Almighty has asked us to look for the truth, that at times He presents the point of view of the disbelievers, the enemies of God's message, so forcefully, honestly and forcefully, the way they would like it to be presented, and does not respond to their criticism, their claims against the Quran and its message. And at times one wonders as to why God does so. And the response that comes to one's mind is that the Almighty would want questions to come to our minds. He would like us to come to the Quran with doubts, so that the Quran removes those doubts, responds to those questions. Unless you are genuinely thirsty, you will not value water. Unless you are hungry, why would you take food the way it deserves to be taken? It's a blessing of the Almighty. It seems that it's a similar case with guidance as well. If you're not genuinely, desperately looking for guidance, then when guidance would come to you, you'll not value it as properly as the one who was in desperate search for it and then got it. So look at what the Almighty has done. He has presented the point of view of the disbelievers quite as forcefully as they would have done themselves, probably even more, and then left to the reader to decide as to whether what they're saying makes sense or not. Most certainly the Quran responds to these claims, these criticisms elsewhere, but at the end of this description, we do not find any response. The Almighty says that this is what the disbelievers say, Ma haza illa basharum mithlukum. He, the messenger, is just like a human like you. Ya'kulu mimma ta'kulun minhu wa yashrabu mimma tashrabun. He eats what you eat and he drinks what you drink. So how can he claim that he is from God? How is it different? How is he any different from us? And then it goes on to say that they would say, وَلَئِنْ أَطَعْتُمْ بَشَرًا مِثْلَكُمْ إِنَّكُمْ إِذًا لَخَاسِرُونَ. And if you are going to follow a human like you, then you are going to be the losers. So don't be fooled. And they would say, أَيَعِدُكُمْ أَنَّكُمْ إِذَا مِتْتُمْ وَكُنْتُمْ تُرَابًا أَنَّكُمْ مُخْرَجُونَ تُرَابًا وَعِظَامًا أَنَّكُمْ مُخْرَجُونَ. Does he promise you that when you are going to die and you will be dust and bones, that you will be brought back to life, brought out from your graves? Hayhata hayhata lima tuwadun. It is far-fetched. How far-fetched is what you are being promised. In hiya illa hayatuna dunya namutu wa nahya wa ma nahnu bimab'uthin. This is just this worldly life of ours and nothing else. There's no other life. We die and we live and will never be resurrected. So this is a very forceful presentation of the point of view of those who were opposing the Quran. The lesson is that when we are dealing with people who have a different point of view, let's not present their point of view in a way that it looks weak and we do injustice with it. Let's understand and present it properly and forcefully, the way they are presenting, and then find out what is wrong with it. Or else what we are doing is not fair. We are being intellectually not honest. We move on to verses 115 to 118, wherein the Almighty is mentioning the same important subject as we have already seen covered in Surah Al-Anbiya, which is the 21st Surah. The Almighty says, أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا. Do you think that we have created you for no reason, in vain? وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا يُرْجَعُونَ. وَأَنَّكُمْ إِلَيْنَا لَا تُرْجَعُونَ. And that towards us you are not going to return. فَتَعَالَى اللَّهُ الْمَلِكُ الْحَقِّ. So exalted is God, the true sovereign. La ilaha illahu. There is no deity except Him. Rabbul Arshil Kareem. He is the Lord of the noble throne. So the Almighty is clarifying yet again that this life is a purposeful life, and there is no chance that we could have done something as purposeless, absurd as creating creatures like humans without any ultimate purpose. So later on in the surah, the criticism that I mentioned earlier was addressed and responded to. Then we move on to Surah An-Nur, which is the only one Madanan surah of the third group of surahs. After 14 surahs, we come to this last Madanan surah. It's unique It has no partner. And when we read this surah, we find that the struggle that the believers undertook under the leadership of the Prophet, may God's mercy be on him, the Almighty is telling these believers that it's going to lead you to success in the way that they're going to be the rulers of this land. And for that purpose, they need to be purified. So this is one of the two subjects of the Madanin surahs, purification and cleansing, moral and spiritual excellence. And then there is the ultimate punishment inflicted upon the enemy. So this surah belongs to the stage when the believers were being purified, cleansed and elevated morally and spiritually. And this, the Quran tells us time and again, was a prerequisite for the ultimate punishment to be inflicted, because it was to be inflicted through the hands of the believers, and the believers had to be up to the level of expectation that the Almighty had from them. So the Muslim society was being cleansed, and the hypocrites that were there within their ranks were also to be removed from their company. So we begin the surah. The first 4 verses, they say, Suratun anzalnaha wa faradnaha wa anzalna fiha ayatim bayyinat la'allakum tazakkarun. It's a great surah which we have revealed, and we have made its injunctions binding, and we have revealed in it very clear messages so that you remember. So right from the beginning, the reader is being mentally prepared that he's reading an important part of the Quranic message. The first thing that this surah mentions is a woman or a man found guilty of extramarital sex, zina, a zaniyatu wa zani, lash each of them with 100 lashes. Fajlidu kulla wahidin minhuma miyata jalda. And let not pity for them keep you away from executing God's religion. If you believe in God and the last day, and let a group of believers witness their punishment. This requirement of some believers being present at the time a punishment is executed is mentioned about no other punishment. This is the only punishment wherein the Almighty has specifically mentioned that there should be a group of believing men and women present while it is being executed. And the reason is that there could always be a tendency among some people that it's not a big crime for people to indulge in extramarital sex. So why should we be so strict about it? The Almighty knew that this weakness is there. He knows that Satan is going to incline people to have sympathy for those who were found guilty of zina, and they were thus being punished. So in order to remove this incorrect understanding, inclination, the Almighty made it imperative that if you want to have a society which is clean, you must know most clearly that extramarital sex is out of the question, and whoever is doing it is filthy, and he or she cannot be a part of the society. In fact, what you find very noticeable is that there is the mention of Zania, the lady who is involved in it first, and then the Zani, because it's not possible that this crime be committed without the consent of the lady. If her consent is not there, then it would be a rape and not the simple act of zina, fornication or adultery. We move on to verses 11 and 12, wherein God is mentioning regarding his guidance, his message regarding a slanderous charge, ifk, that was made against a wife of the Prophet. The Almighty doesn't mention who she was, but does mention very clearly that there was something very serious that happened in the society of Medina. There were hypocrites who tried to create a mountain out of nothing, and some otherwise well-meaning believers, companions, also got involved in the flow of this slanderous charge that people were talking of very casually. The Almighty says, Inna allazina ja'u bil ifk. Indeed, those who came with the slanderous charge, usbatum minkum, they are a group amongst you. La tahsabuhu sharran lakum. Don't consider it bad for you. Bal huwa khairul lakum. Instead, it was good for you. That is, such incidents, although seem to be very unpleasant, yet the fact is that because the society of the believers was going through a process of cleansing, such incidents had to take place for the society to be cleansed, to be guided, to be informed about what are the right ways and what are the wrong ones, and how to get rid of those people who are involved in such evil acts. لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ مَكْتَسَبَ مِنَ الْإِثْمِ. For each person who committed sin among them, there would be a burden in his record. وَالَّذِي تَوَلَّى كِبْرَهُ مِنْهُمْ لَهُ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And the one who initiated and masterminded the plot, and as a consequence took the greater portion of it, that is, the chief leader of the hypocrites, Abdullah ibn Ubay, for him is a terrible punishment. Then the Almighty says in verses 16 to 18, commenting on the way believers behaved in this scenario, وَلَوْلَا إِذْ سَمِعْتُمُوهُ قُلْتُمْ مَا يَكُونُ لَنَا أَن نَتَكَلَّمَ بِهَذَا. And why did you not say, when you heard it, it is not for us to talk about this? Why did you respond that way? We can't talk negatively about a believing man or a woman. Subhanaka haza buhtanun azim. Glory be to you, O God. This is a disgusting slander. Ya'izukumullahu an ta'udu. God is warning you never to repeat it. Limithlihi, like anything like that, abada, ever, in kuntum mu'minin, if you are truly believers. So, the respect, honor of every believing man and woman is something which all Muslims must make sure that they have to maintain. Unless a person is found guilty, is convicted, and the charge is proved, nobody has a right to talk nonsense and hurl allegations against others. If that happens, the person who is hurling allegations on others is the one who is guilty, not those who are being accused. Verse 19 says, following on the same theme, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحِبُّونَ أَن تَشِيَ الْفَاحِشَةَ. Those who like to spread obscenity, فِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, among believers, لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. For them is a grievous punishment, فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ, both in this world and the next one. So, whether it's obscenity through the word of mouth or through some other way, if it is attempted to be deliberately spread amongst believers, then such people are going to get a punishment in this life as well before the next life. We move on to verse 22. And the Almighty says, and let not the resourceful and affluent among you swear against giving support to the near relatives, the needy, and the migrants in the cause of God, learning that they got involved in slandering. So there were some well-off, affluent people who were in their routine helping out their poor relatives. But these well-off people came to learn about the fact that some of the people that they were helping were the ones who got involved in this slanderous campaign. And they decided that no way that we are going to help them anymore. And the Almighty said, no, don't do that. That's not how you should respond. Instead, they should overlook what they did and forgive them. Wouldn't you like God to forgive you? Indeed, God is forgiving, merciful. In other words, the Almighty is telling us that if you would want to be forgiven by God on the day of judgment, then you must forgive people that you are dealing with in this life. You forgive and have mercy on people in this life, and God will forgive you and have mercy on you in the next life. That's what the principle is. So, okay, what they did was wrong. They shouldn't have gotten involved in the slanderous campaign, but carry on with your good task of helping them out. Then we move on to verse 26, wherein the Almighty is telling us that the arrangement that we have in this worldly life, wherein there are couples, husbands and wives, we find that there are good husbands accompanying wives who are good and pious. There are husbands who are evil, and their wives are also evil. But there are occasions, there are situations, cases, wherein the husband is good, pious, but the wives are evil. Or the wives are pious and husbands are evil. That's how it is in this life, because this life is a trial. I mean, this life is not ideal. However, in the next life, it's going to be changed. And the Almighty is going to decide about all men and women on the basis of the merit of their performance as to whether they would belong to the paradise or to the hell. And those who will end up in the paradise for the good deeds that they did, they will have good partners. And those who will be punished in the next life, in the hell, they will have bad, evil, filthy partners. So the Quran says, Al-khabithatu lil-khabithina wal-khabithuna lil-khabithat. Impure women shall partner with impure men, and impure men shall have impure women as their partners. وَالطَّيِّبَاتُ لِلطَّيِّبِينَ وَالطَّيِّبُونَ لِلطَّيِّبَاتِ. And pure women are going to partner with pure men, and pure men will have pure women as their partners. The partnership in this life, which was not really compatible, where the two individuals were living together even though one was evil and the other was good, that's going to finish, and they are going to disassociate themselves from each other. Unfortunately, this verse somehow has been incorrectly understood by some people to mean that this is what's happening in this life. No, it's not happening in this life. In this life, according to the Quran, we know, for instance, that such pious, noble people like Nuh and Lut alayhi salam, Noah and Lot, their wives were not good, and therefore they will end up in the hellfire. While as evil a person as Pharaoh had an excellent wife and very pious lady who is going to end up in the paradise. We move on to verses 30 and 31, and we find that the Almighty is talking about certain etiquette which need to be followed by believers while men and women are interacting with each other. These instructions can be given the title of etiquette of gender interaction. And the way these instructions have been positioned in this particular surah chapter is suggesting that it's like you want to avoid a disaster, and for that you are taking preventive measures. Like, for instance, in today's modern world, we know that there are vehicles which ply on the roads, and we all would want to reach our destinations in quick time. However, there is a danger then when a large number of vehicles are going to be there simultaneously on the roads. At times, the traffic would choke, there would be accidents, injuries, or worse still, deaths. In order to avoid this evil, humans have been able to come up with what we call traffic rules, traffic laws. So we are very particular about the way we drive. We fasten our seat belts. We cannot go beyond a certain speed limit. We use our indicators. We are particular about the lanes, etc. We respect the traffic lights and so on. It seems that there is a similar principle applied by the Almighty in the case of the accident of zina. Because while we interact with each other, and interaction is obviously necessary, like plying vehicles on the roads is essential, yet there are dangers, and therefore, like in the case of traffic rules, there are certain rules that the Almighty has required both believing men and women to follow in order for them to be saved from the embarrassment of that ultimate accident called zina. So the Almighty says, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُمْ. Tell believing men to keep their gazes clean and guard their private parts. That is, when they are interacting with other people, including women, they should be careful about the way they look at others. Their gaze has to be clean, pure. The gaze of somebody who is a noble person. Even if you were to look at them, you should look at them in a way that you are a gentle, pious, noble person. There's nothing evil in your eyes. And he's also instructing men to guard their private parts. In other words, to be dressed up in a way that is not revealing, and also to not have any evil intentions in mind. The same instructions are given by the Almighty to women as well. They too have been asked to be careful about their gazes and to cover their private parts properly. But they have also been asked, because they are ladies who are inclined, interested in embellishing themselves, that if they have embellished themselves either through jewelry or makeup, then they must cover all parts of their body that have been embellished, except what are apparent. Face, hands and feet are an exception, but for the rest of the body, if these parts have been embellished, then they must be covered. So this is what the Almighty says, and He keeps saying that He knows what you do and how you behave. So it's important that they make sure that they are being quite as careful as the occasion when they are interacting with each other, the occasion demands. Then we move on to an important verse, verse 33 of the surah, wherein the Almighty says, وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ. وَالَّذِينَ يَبْتَغُونَ الْكِتَابَ. That's the starting point. Those people, that is, those slaves and slave girls who approach you to be freed, emancipated, and they want you to involve yourself with them in a contract wherein you decide a price tag for them. They had prices. That's unfortunate, but that's what the truth is. You decide for a value, a price of them, and free them, writing a contract wherein you decide that the man or a woman who was a slave or a slave girl, when he or she is going to be freed, the person will be bound to give the amount of the price that was attached to him or her to the owner. And it would obviously be done in installments. It had to be made easy. But the Almighty says, "Fakatimuhum." If that demand comes from a slave or a slave girl, then you must write it down. And he says that believers, the rest of the community, must contribute in freeing slaves and slave girls by helping them out in returning the amount or giving the amount to the owner. So the Almighty says, "Va'atuhum mimma lillahi allazi atakum," and you give to them the wealth that the Almighty has given to you, so that they are freed. So slavery was not a part of the system of Islam. When the Almighty revealed His message, there were slaves and slave girls. It was a problem that was there in the society. The Almighty helped in gradually enabling the society to get rid of it, or He guided the society to get rid of this problem, this curse, by going through certain steps. And the last of these steps was this particular verse, which declared that all slaves and slave girls have a right to get themselves freed by entering into a contract with their masters. The other step that made sure that slavery is going to be eliminated from the Muslim society was mentioned in verse 4 of Surah Muhammad, Surah number 47, wherein the Almighty says that after you've made prisoners of war, then وَإِمَّا مَنَّمْ بَعْدُ فَإِمَّا مَنَّمْ بَعْدُ وَإِمَّا فِدَانٍ. Don't make them slaves. Well, this is what I'm mentioning as an implied expression. But what the Quran says, فَإِمَّا مَنَّمْ بَعْدُ وَإِمَّا فِدَانٍ. Either you free them voluntarily by conferring on them your favor, or fidan, you get fidya, payment for freeing them, but don't keep them as slaves and slave girls. Thereafter we come to a very well-known verse of the Quran, verse 35, which says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Belief in God is the light of the heavens and the earth. That is, when you believe in God, you come into the light of this entire existence. Without properly believing in God, you are facing thick darkness. Nothing is clear. Who created us? Why did He create us? What is the purpose of life? Why are there so many difficulties, problems? Why do people die? What is going to happen after death? All these questions remain unanswered, and it's darkness, it's confusion. So when we believe in God properly, then we come to light. We find things getting clearer. The smog, the confusion is over. And it goes on to say, God guides towards His light whom He wills. He looks at the intentions, the eagerness of people, whether they want to know the truth or not, and He guides who want to be guided. And he goes on to say later, as for those who are bent upon ignoring this light, their apparently good deeds would be like mirage in a desert, that the thirsty imagines to be water, until when he gets there, he finds it to be nothing. Instead, he finds God there, who pays back what he deserves. He pays him back in full. And God is swift at settling accounts. Then we move on to the important verse 55, which is giving the good news to the believers that quite apart from the success of the next life, you believers, those amongst you who will survive, will very soon see for yourself that you will be given the reins of rule. You will have the control of this land as a reward for the good deeds that you've performed after the punishment will have been implemented against the disbelievers. It's mentioned in Surah, in verse 55, God says, God has promised those who believe and practice righteousness among you, that is, among the companions of the Prophet, that He will certainly make them empower the land as He did for those who were before them, and He will for sure establish their religion for them. And He will certainly instill peace following their fear. So He is telling believers, He's promising them, very soon you will be ruling over this land, and because you will get the opportunity, all instructions that the Almighty wants to be implemented in the society are going to be implemented through you, and as a consequence, the period of fear is going to be over, and He's going to instill peace in the society. They will continue to worship me without ascribing partners with me. So the prophecy is that these evil times that you're experiencing because of the disbelievers, they're going to be over, and you will finally have the ultimate victory, which is going to lead to the rule of the Muslims, and the good times are going to come very soon. So, as I've been mentioning, these surahs are talking about consistently warning to the disbelievers on the one hand and the good news to the believers on the other. And this is the ultimate good news for the worldly phase of their existence, that they are going to get the rule which will enable them to exercise the Almighty's will on the society. Finally, we have towards the end of the surah certain verses which are the clarifying verses. This has been a pattern in many of the Quranic surahs, wherein the Almighty mentions a certain instruction. The instruction in its mention is very clear, but there are people who are confused. They cannot find the right way of implementing the Almighty's expectations. And then after a certain while, the Almighty comes up with His response as to how the expectation could be implemented, and if there were any confusions, He removes those confusions. So we saw in verses 30 and 31 that the Almighty was asking believers to be careful while dealing with the opposite gender. There were some people who took it too far, and there were some who had some confusions regarding certain matters. So there are three verses which clarify some of those confusions, starting from verse 58. The Almighty says there are durations of privacy when even young kids, slaves, servants and slaves too should seek permission from individuals before entering their rooms. Min qabli salatil fajr, before the Fajr prayer, wahina tada'una thiyabakum, and when you put aside your clothing for rest in the afternoon, wa min ba'di salatil isha, and after the Isha prayer. These are the three occasions of privacy for you. Then the Almighty says in verse 60 that the elderly ladies who have gone past the age when they would hope for getting married, the requirements and expectations from them are not quite as stringent as are from other ladies who are young. And the third clarification comes in verse 61, when the Almighty says that the idea of asking you to be careful about dealing with the opposite gender is not that you should have a social boycott or you separate from yourselves from others and not socialize with them. You can go to all your relatives, you can go and visit your close friends, you can have meals together, you can have meals separately. This is up to you. The important thing is that the instructions are followed properly so that when you are interacting with each other, you are clean and pure in your intentions, in your gazes, and the way you interact with each other. May the Almighty enable us to understand His message properly, and may He enable us to follow it to the best of our abilities.